Welcome. Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the October 22nd, 2024 City of Roseville Public Utilities Commission meeting. This 7-member commission is responsible for studying and advising the City Council regarding all utilities owned or operated by the city, including electric, water, wastewater, and solid waste. The Public Utilities Commission advises the City Council regarding planning, rates, public information, cable television franchises, and other matters relating to such enterprises, and may also hear citizen complaints as to operation or rates. The Public Utilities Commission also advises the City Council regarding the activities of such joint powers agencies as the city may be a member of or which relate to the public utility enterprises. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please put your electronic devices on silent. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner DeLacy?
Here.
Commissioner DeMarkey is absent. Commissioner Knox?
Here.
Commissioner Maish?
Here.
Commissioner Springer?
Here.
Commissioner Webb?
Here.
And Chair Bilski.
Here. Commissioner Springer, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Item 4 on the agenda is public comments. This item is for anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the commission, please state your first and last name for the record. Anyone? Okay. All right. Item 5.1 is the approval of the August 27, 24 meeting minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
Abstention. I was not here.
Okay. Next on the agenda is requests and presentations. Item 6.1, Environmental Monthly Utilities Update. Report by the Environmental Utilities Assistant Director, Sean Bigley, summarizing the monthly status of environmental utility activities for information.
All right. Good evening, members of the Public Utilities Commission. I'm Sean Bigley. I'm an Assistant Environmental Utilities Director. I have 3 items just to update you on with respect to activities related to EU. So first, just a little plug for tomorrow night. We have our annual State of Roseville Water virtual presentation that's going on. It's actually a presentation we do for members of the community. Essentially what we do is we do an overview of the water supplies in Roseville, also talk a little bit about our water reliability projects, talk about current system conditions in California relative to the projects, and also information relative to our water efficiency program and rebates. So that's going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. The way that you can access the presentation is on the utilities Facebook page. There's actually an event that's posted in that Facebook page, and you can essentially note you're interested in it and get the link there for that presentation. And again, we just encourage, obviously, members of the PUC, if you have the time and interest, to certainly join us tomorrow, but also encourage members of the community to also participate. It's a really good session, a lot of good information, and it provides background and context in terms of water supply and what we do in terms of the water utility specifically. All right, so switching topics on emergency preparedness. So we're constantly working on making sure that our utilities are prepared for emergency situations that do occur from time to time. Essentially, how do we prepare for those activities? How do we manage during those events? And then also, how do we recover from disasters, whatever those disasters could be? So last week, staff from our water and wastewater utilities actually participated in a tabletop exercise. It was built around a simulated flood event in Roseville. And essentially, the event showed operations at the city's corporation yard as well as the Dry Creek wastewater treatment plant affected by the simulated flood. What that does is basically in these tabletop exercises, which we do from time to time, actually allows our staff to think through operations in terms of how you would deal with that particular circumstance. as well as really kind of honing in on and refining coordination with other city departments. Often it's not a one department activity, it's multiple departments working together in coordination. As well as working through what a disaster recovery would look like. And in this case, we're talking about the Dry Creek wastewater treatment plant being impacted, as well as Corporation Yard. And what would that look like in terms of making sure we recover from that and get back to providing the services to our customers as they expect. So just as a related note, this type of activity coincides with various disaster preparedness activities that we're engaged in, specifically training related to the water and wastewater industry. So later this year and into 2025, we're going to be working with Texas A&M's Engineering Extension Service, known as TEEX. And they have a center there out of College Station, Texas, that offers utility-specific disaster preparedness training, as well as training on a whole variety of different components, including cyber in the context of operational technology. And so we are currently working with Texas A&M through their extension service to get staff signed up for that training and really kind of beefing up the amount of preparedness we're doing on emergency preparedness, et cetera. So more to come on that. Again, 2025 is when a lot of that training is going to occur, and we'll provide an update to PUC as far as outcomes. Finally, just to end, just want to talk about Water Professionals Week. So what I want to do after I go through this quick update here is just note that California Water Professionals Appreciation Week happens every year during the first week of October, and it was officially recognized several years ago through Senate Bill 129. And it's essentially an opportunity to honor our fantastic water professionals who strengthen our communities through their dedication and service. So what we did is our staff in EU was able to develop a video that features our hardworking men and women behind our reliable water and wastewater services, and really those folks that really maintain our city's infrastructure and keep that infrastructure operating smoothly daily, 24/7, 365. So again, the week was our opportunity to spotlight those careers in the water industry, as well as the various roles behind the scenes that make everything work. So with that, what I'd like to do is go ahead and get the video queued up, and you can take a look and see what it's all about.
Every drop we deliver and care for in Roseville is more than just water. It promises reliability, quality, sustainability, and innovation for our community.
Our water experts are always on the job, making sure your water flows when you turn on the tap.
After it's used, we treat it to the highest standards for returning it back to nature.
No matter what, our mission is to provide you with dependable and valuable service every day.
Our commitment to quality shows in every step. We're dedicated to keeping your drinking water clean and safe, and responsibly treating wastewater to safeguard our environment.
Our water supply is secure and diverse, but we know the work isn't done. We're continuously adapting to weather changes, expanding access, and embracing sustainability to protect our resources and to secure our community's future.
Innovation is our driving force. We embrace new ideas and cutting-edge technology to ensure our community remains resilient and forward-thinking.
Every drop tells a story of reliability, quality, sustainability, and innovation. We're proud to deliver that story to you every day. Water. It's not just a word, it's our promise.
All right. So that, again, was just for Water Professionals Appreciation Week. And again, a very nice way to recognize the folks that are working really hard to provide services here in Roseville. So with that, that'll conclude my presentation here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any commissioners have questions for staff at this time? Oh, that's outstanding. So we just had the Loma Prieta anniversary. Is seismic at all an issue for us, or not really?
Certainly, seismic is always kind of in the portfolio of hazards that we certainly have to account for. So in some circumstances, you can definitely train staff to deal with those particular circumstances. You never want to rule it out. Obviously, we're not in the Bay Area or LA, but certainly we're not immune to potential seismic events. So those are definitely in the context of emergency preparedness. The ICS structure, you train for pretty much everything that could impact services for sure, including seismic.
Thank you. Anything? Good? All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission at this time? Okay. Thank you, Sean. Item 6.2, Roseville Environmental Utilities Legislative and Regulatory Update. Presentation by Government Relations Representative Sarah Starr Boudreau, providing a year-end overview of priority water, wastewater, and waste services legislation and regulatory issues addressed in 2024. And this is for information.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Sarah Starr with the Environmental Utilities Department. Tonight, I will provide you with an overview of issues that we worked on throughout the legislative session, which concluded on August 31st. Governor Newsom had until September 30th to veto or pass any bills that made it to his desk. Tonight, I will be covering state legislation that focuses on connection fees and capacity charges, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, extended producer responsibility, or EPR, and low-income rate assistance. Additionally, I will give an update on a state regulatory effort, and then I will conclude with an update on our congressionally directed spending request at the federal level. The first measure I will cover this evening deals with the ability for local agencies to collect connection fees and capacity charges. The legislature has been introducing bills that they believe will help to spur housing development. Staff believes they are actually limiting a local government's ability to adequately manage the infrastructure needs of new housing. This includes our ability to collect mitigation fees, which can help with the impact of new development on current residents, and connection fees and capacity charges, which are implemented to ensure that new housing developments pay their fair share to connect to the existing water and wastewater systems. In this session, EU took action on 3 bills that dealt with connection fees and capacity charges, and SB 937 by Senator Wiener is one of those bills. Working through our associations, EU was able to move to a neutral position on the bills when the connection fees and capacity charges were removed. However, amendments taken by the author on August 22nd reintroduced utilities back into the bill. SB 937 prohibits local agencies from requiring fees to be paid for development projects until the certificate of occupancy or a temporary certificate of occupancy is issued. Previously, Roseville would have been able to collect these fees when the building permit was issued. This means that Roseville would be prevented from obtaining the funding needed for essential infrastructure until a date much later down the line, as these developments often take a number of months and in many cases years to complete. And there's an error on this slide as we move to an opposed position within that last week of session due to the bad faith negotiations by the author's office. And Roseville signed on to an opposition coalition letter headed by the California Municipal Utilities Association and the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. We also submitted an individual letter to the governor urging him to veto SB 937, but ultimately he did pass the law.
Shucks.
Roseville is taking a proactive approach in addressing PFAS by supporting source control legislation. AB 2515 by Assemblywoman Pappen prohibits a manufacturer from intentionally adding PFAS into menstrual products beginning January 1st, 2025. Additionally, beginning January 1st, 2027, PFAS contained in a menstrual product cannot exceed a limit that will be determined by the Department of Toxic Substances Control through the regulatory process. PFAS is nearly impossible to break down, so when menstrual products are improperly flushed down the toilet or washed in the laundry machine, these chemicals are entering our wastewater systems. In recent years, there's increased regulatory activity trying to limit the use of PFAS and their cleanup. The U.S. EPA recently adopted a national drinking water standard for PFAS, and there are growing concerns about PFAS in biosolids that get land applied. The state is now working on developing a public health goal and a maximum contaminant level, which could increase the costs on our ratepayers. Knowing this, it's essential to continue to limit PFAS in products, and EU supported this measure throughout the process with advocacy letters and testimony down at the Capitol. Governor Newsom signed AB 2515 into law, which will help reduce PFAS chemicals from entering our waste streams. Roseville has not detected any PFAS in our drinking water, as we are required to test for PFAS under the 5th Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule, which was established by the U.S. EPA. Next, SB 707 aligns with Roseville's City Council adopted Council Resolution 10-278, which demonstrates Roseville's support and efforts to enact a comprehensive statewide EPR law that allocates end-of-life disposal costs with the producer of the product rather than the costs to properly dispose of products being borne on Roseville's ratepayers. Roseville supported SB 707 by Senator Newman, which requires producers of apparel or textile articles to form a Producer Responsibility Organization, or a PRO. Textile articles include footwear, bags, and other knitted accessories. Under a PRO, producers must complete a plan for the collection, transportation, sorting, recycling, and the safe and proper management of apparel in the state. Additionally, SB 707 requires CalRecycle to adopt regulations to implement this program by July 1st, 2028. Throughout the two-year session, Roseville joined onto a coalition letters in support of SB 707, and we are pleased that Governor Newsom signed this bill into law. The last state legislative measure that I have for you tonight is related to low-income rate assistance, or LIRA. SB 1255 by Senator Durazo would have mandated systems with 3,300 service connections or more to create an opt-out rate assistance program. Roseville would have been required to place a suggested voluntary contribution on every customer's water bill that would have been used to fund this new state-mandated program. Customers would have been required to take action to opt out of making the contribution, and Roseville would have been required to do an education campaign to make Roseville residents aware of this voluntary contribution on their bill. Additionally, for low-income customers who qualified, Roseville would have been required to provide at minimum a 20% discount on their water and wastewater bills by July 1st, 2027. While Roseville supports the ability for water agencies to develop a LIRA program to meet the needs of their community, there were a number of concerning aspects of SB 1255 as written. The most notable being the opt-out provision, which would have resulted in a lack of transparency with our customers. We currently have 40%, or about 30,000 customers, who automatically pay their bill each month, which increases the chances that they would have no knowledge that this voluntary contribution was on their bill. Additionally, this bill was gut and amended back in April of this year, leaving only 4 months for the water industry to negotiate with the author's office and other stakeholders. The bill died in committee before making it to the governor's desk. However, the sponsors and author have stated that they plan to introduce a bill next year on this topic. Roseville and water industry partners are currently working with one of our statewide trade associations to introduce a bill of our own that would be permissive of creating a program that meets the needs of our community. Moving on to my state regulatory update, the final Making Conservation a California Way of Life regulations were adopted this summer on July 3rd. Since we last met, there were only minor technical changes to the regulations before its final adoption. We are pleased that they added a variance option to promote the health of our vital tree canopies. In its final form, Roseville will be required to calculate our urban water use objective by adding together our residential indoor water use, our residential outdoor water use, our real water loss, and our commercial, industrial, and institutional landscapes with dedicated irrigation meters. We can apply for variances for things like recycled water, the establishment of new trees, and maintaining existing tree canopies, just to name a few. It's important to remember that this objective is not at the individual customer level. EU's conservation staff are happy to provide presentations to community organizations on this regulation and how Roseville plans to comply with this regulation. Just recently, EU's conservation supervisor, Justin Black, provided presentations to the Sun City Garden Club and the Sun City Government Affairs Committee. Our staff were heavily engaged throughout the regulatory process by meeting with board members, participating in work group meetings with our statewide trade associations, submitting letters to the board from the mayor, and providing in-person testimony about how these regulations will impact our city. Lastly, I want to provide an update on our congressionally directed spending request. This year, we submitted our joint Roseville and Placer County Water Agency raw water conveyance project This project will provide a backup intake further up on the American River, thereby reducing reliance on Folsom Reservoir during times of drought. We submitted a $3 million appropriations request with our congressional delegation, and in June, we reported to the Commission that Senators Padilla and Senator Butler had included our project in their congressionally directed spending requests. Unfortunately, our project was not included in the final appropriations legislation. While this is disappointing, we have been making progress with the Army Corps on defining the first increment of work for the project, and in a letter to Congressman Kiley, they indicated that they would consider requesting funding in their 2025 work plan so that we could get the project partnership agreement in place and begin work on the first increment. Once we have the PPA in place, we will be better positioned to receive future appropriations. And this project did receive a $21 million authorization in 2022. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm not a Scott Wiener fan. I don't know what that man is thinking at times. But this one sentence jumped out at me that just has got me perplexed. Oh, on the textile thing. You know, I put on my T-shirt. It's made in Sri Lanka. This shirt, I think, is from Vietnam. The pants are probably from South Korea. How in the world is that? How are they going to enforce a textile? The textile industry is gone from California. How will they? I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't want to misspeak, and I don't exactly know, but I'm happy to get back to you with that.
Okay. And then this sentence did not make sense at all to me on the conservation way of life. New variants for irrigating existing residential trees on commercial, industrial, and institutional landscapes?
Yeah, so the variances are in place. So when we're adding together our water budget, the variances are in place to basically add a benefit back to us. So our recycled water program, we can get a benefit back for that. So it actually will help us in the long run. Okay. And that's the same goes for the tree canopies.
I'm sorry, I neglected to ask, do any of the commissioners have questions? Yes?
I do. I also had a question about the extended producer responsibility. How, and you may not know the answer, but I'm imagining everything we collect goes to the MRF, and the MRF separates it all out. Now we're going to have some third party trying to separate out all the textiles and shoes and get them out of our waste stream?
Crazy.
That what this is?
You want me to address this? Okay. So I was back in 2010, so I remember the council meeting where council adopted the policy relative to extended producer responsibility. So the concept is actually what you said, Einar, but it's really kind of product by product. So a couple of examples that have been in place. So there's a extended producer responsibility organization that deals with paint, as an example. And there's another one that deals with batteries. And so what it does is it essentially takes the onus off local governments to fund recycling of those products, and it puts it back on the industry to create an organization to collect these materials. And so the intended policy impact is really to reduce the amount of waste that's actually being brought to public facilities on the public dime, essentially, to deal with ultimately. So that's really the construct. And so there's several examples where the proponents of EPR have kind of gone industry by industry over the years to put these in place. So this is the textiles is sort of that next product group that they're.
So when I go to the dump, I have to stop off at the paint place to drop off my paint and the battery in it.
Yeah, I mean, and practically speaking, I mean, for as an example where the paint is, so what they've done is they've actually put drop-offs at, you know, a Sherwin-Williams or a paint store where you can bring your old paint back, you know, either bring it back or bring it back and then get more paint or whatever. So they're doing it in such a way to make it convenient for the consumer.
All right.
So that's the concept.
And I had a question on the joint Roseville PCWA project, and that was, what's the role of the Corps of Engineers?
So The project itself is actually, it's a fairly expensive project. So we're talking about a project that's going to take 10 to 15 years. It's a 3-phase project. Realistically, we're talking about just north of $100 million project. So in terms of the financing of that project, probably not going to happen with the resources that we have that we can bring to bear locally. So the idea here is for these types of larger regional projects, we need to kind of look at external funding and external funding opportunities. In this particular case, working through our lobbyist, this is through the Section 219 program, which is our environmental infrastructure program. So the way that the funding works for that program, and granted, there's quite a process to get through working with the Army Corps, but what's attractive is that if you can get that project partnership agreement in place, our local share is 25%, with the federal share being 75%. So there's a fair incentive to be able to hopefully gain that funding, but it's a process, and it's not without its ups and downs, as you've seen in Sarah's presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I was very excited to hear there are no PFAS in our water. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, every plastic, so that's really,
Because we're drinking snow melt.
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other commissioners' questions for staff? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Okay, thank you both. That's
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next item is 6.3, Roseville Electric Utility Monthly Update, report by Roseville Electric Chief Executive Officer, Dan Beans, summarizing the monthly status of electric utility activities for information. And we have...
Yeah, good evening, Chair Bilski. Not Dan Beans, Sean Matcham, your Chief Operating Officer for Roseville Electric. I have a few items here for the commission. We have a couple formal presentations, but before then, I wanted to highlight a couple things that I think are noteworthy for the commission and the community. The first thing I'll say is that EU brought their A game tonight. I do not have a video to share. I will, though, note there was some good-looking generating units there behind one of those water tanks there. So, for electric, just a few items. The first thing I wanted to share, it was noteworthy for us internally at the department, is it's been a warm October. And so uniquely for us, in the beginning of October, the first 10 days, I think was the main warm weather, a lot of triple digits mixed in there. As a utility, we hit a all-time high peak demand for an October month in our history. So 280 megawatts was the number in early October. And it was noteworthy statistically for us, but noteworthy for us operationally. As many of you may know, as we get deep into year like that, much of our hydro production is dissipated. It gets used earlier in the summer, certainly late July, early August, and into September. So some of the resource stack we typically lean on to serve the community here was dissipated just from the runoff and the hydro in the reservoirs. We also had a meaningful fire at the California-Oregon border that took out 4,800 megawatts of transmission import capability into California. Roseville, we have nearly 80 megawatts of that, so that was lost as well. And the general temperatures and loads during that 10-day period remained elevated before we got any cooler temperature. So I just wanted to note that and just mention this is why we plan so much and look forward to how we need to serve the community here, the loads. How we plan for reserve margins for things like this is very important. Often you hear about us talking about our resource stack, the resources we're going to use, the diversity in resources. All of that is very helpful when we get into situations like what we saw early in October. I don't normally talk about October loads, but it was very unique for us to see that happen. Statewide, obviously the grid held up well, but there were some unique circumstances that were of interest to us, and I just want to share all-time records for us here in early October. The second thing I'll mention, it relates to an item that I know I've talked to the commission about on a number of occasions, but I wanted to provide an update, and it relates to the California Department of Water Resources generating units that are located out at the Roseville Energy Park. I've mentioned many times, we have a series of agreements with the state. Notable here is we put ourselves, at the end of last year, we put ourselves on a path of ownership for those units. And there were some key triggers as an organization that we sought to achieve to take accelerated ownership of those units here, hopefully this year. As a reminder, the default scenario was if we did nothing, we would own the units in 2027 and 2028. As an organization, we saw value in advancing that earlier, and so we took all the steps necessary early this year through the middle of the year. And then the most important thing is we did meet all the triggers for taking accelerated ownership of those 2 units. At the City Council's last meeting last Wednesday night, we took a series of amendments to the City Council for recommendation. They approved it, and it did a few things. One, it finalized the transfer of those units from the state of California to Roseville effective November 1st, so just here at the end of the month. We amended the agreements that we have with DWR to also explore opportunities to repower our older generating facility called the Roseville Power Plant, with potentially relocating 2 existing generating units that the state has operating under their emergency program, the same program that we operated, the ones at RAP. So a very unique opportunity for us. We're excited about what the path forward could be on that. But I wanted to come back and mention this to the commission because it was a tremendous effort by our staff, by our city attorney's office. Joel Mandel, who's here tonight, was tremendously helpful in moving these things forward. Assistance from our city clerk's office. And so pretty exciting for us as an organization, pretty excited for us as a city. These assets will help us serve the community in the foreseeable future. And so just wanted to report back that that item is done, and we've put a nice bow on that title transfer. And now looking ahead to see if there's an opportunity to work even more closely with DWR about make our Roseville Power Plant number 2 even better than it is. And so more to come on that. Wanted to report that to the commission.
That was such a smart move. I mean, that was brilliant, but just brilliant.
Yeah, it was something. We were fortunate with the really unique opportunity for us to bring additional capacity into the portfolio here for Roseville. Many of you may know, very difficult to build generation in California under normal circumstances, and just the circumstances today that exist with supply chain delays, cost of money and capital for developers to bring infrastructure to market, and not to mention more technically the process to actually interconnect generating assets to the bulk grid has really been a meaningful backlog. And so for us to be able to strike quickly and take state-of-the-art peaking units and bring them into our portfolio, which means they become ours. They're part of how we serve this community, our residents and businesses. Tremendous opportunities. We're very excited about it. We're very excited to have a partner with DWR on that. So yeah, we're pretty excited about that arrangement. The last thing I'll mention relates to something that doesn't get a lot of visibility, but we've been working on for about 8 or 9 months now, and it relates to moving into our new Roseville Electric Utility headquarters just across Vernon Square here. As many of you are well aware, we currently are in the first 2 floors of the building. The bottom floor is really our customer care center. They can come in, make payments. Our call center is there, and so that's a public lobby. We take payments. We work with our customers on programs. That facility is actually, we support both electric and EU billing and programs there. So that's there now. Second floor supports that, and we also have some of the staff that's over at our 2090 location there. So We're going to be moving the rest of our 2090 management and administrative staff over to the new building on the 3rd and 4th floor. As I sit here now, we'll have a permit to occupy within the next 30 days, and we'll be moving our staff, remaining of our staff, to this location here downtown. Very exciting for us. The staff's very excited. The service function for our customers will not be impacted, but we'll bring more of our team together, and then we'll turn our attention to some changes in terms of the facilities at 2090. It will basically become an operations center for our field crews, our metering, our substations, and transmission line folks. So a little shuffle organizationally on the facility side. A lot of work has been going into this over the last maybe last year, in fact, when you look at everything that needs to get done. So that's coming. We're closing that out, and we're excited to get our staff together. So all intended to help support a better service and better delivery of our products and services to our customers. So we're excited about that. So with that, I'll stop as a general department-wide update. I know we've got a legislative update as well as a backbone update here from our staff, but I'm glad to answer any questions on those items or anything else we have at the utility.
Oh, I'm going to ask the transformer question. Had a bunch of hurricanes.
Yeah. So big impact out east in the southeast to many utilities. A significant mutual aid going out there from the West Coast. Even we thought about sending some crews out, so we didn't. But still, a meaningful restoration effort going on out there. With respect to supply chain items and specifically transformers due to the hurricanes, we've not seen any impact in any deliveries to Roseville Electric. In fact, last week we had 2 transport truck deliveries of residential pad-mounted transformers, those green boxes that you've heard so much about and are so important for us to help promote and support residential new construction in Roseville. So short answer is we've not seen any impact. We've gotten deliveries even in the last week. We have a meaningful inventory of transformers in our courtyard now of all sizes, both residential, commercial, large commercial. We still recognize there's a meaningful delay in the substation level transformers, so the ones that go to our main substations. We have 18 of them here in the community. So those are still very long lead time, uncertainty around delivery times for those. But I'm glad to say that our transformers to support our commercial and residential development here, we're sitting in a good spot now. We still have outstanding orders that haven't been delivered yet, but I'll characterize it as the cogs of production are starting to move, and we're getting deliveries, which is great. It does require a lot of calls to our manufacturer and our reps, so I think that's what I would characterize. It's very easy to get deprioritized in the bigger scheme when bigger utilities are ordering for restoration efforts, things like that. But a little what I'll call rattling the cages and calling ends up getting a delivery, and so that's what's happened recently. But short answer, we're sitting in a good position in terms of our inventory on transformers. And importantly, we've not been, and this is really important, we've not been an impediment to any development here in the community. We have put some plans in place as contingencies, but we certainly haven't held up any residential developers or commercial development, and certainly that's not our intent going forward.
You were talking at one time about buying transformers South Korea or elsewhere. Did you have to resort to that, or are you buying them all domestically?
So we're buying. They're not all domestic. We still are preferred, our preferred vendor is a domestic supplier. We have bought South Korean transformers, and we've had deliveries. I don't know the number. It might have been 20 to 30 in that ballpark. And so we are trying those out and seeing how they look. Initial feedback is the quality that we see, and our field crews have had a chance to look closely at them. They look good. We haven't got many of them in the field yet, so we'll test them. But yeah, so when we went into this supply chain bottleneck, certainly on the transformers, we went through all venues, right? So we wanted to, we expanded our use of vendors. We worked with our legal counsel to do that. We front-loaded orders. We got budget authorization to order more sooner, anticipating longer delays. And then we even looked at our specifications. Are there things that we need to do? Were we ordering maybe like a unique type of specification that was causing a delay? So I would say we ran the gamut on everything. But to answer your question, yeah, we did receive South Korean transformers. I think it was from Hyundai, so legitimate company, high-quality company. And so we're hopeful they work just fine based on the supplier. Yeah.
So a different follow-up question. On a different thing you brought up, eventually, in spite of no matter how much maintenance you do come to end of life on even a power plant. Was the opportunity to bring in this additional capacity from DWR a way to prolong the value here, or is it actually new and extra capacity, or yes, both, or?
Yeah, I think the short answer, I'll explain, yes to both.
Yes,
right?
both.
And so the units that were already sited at the Roseville Energy Park, so obviously they were installed, interconnected. Our arrangement with DWR is we operated, we maintained, we dispatched them in the market. So those units, and we preserved an option to buy those from the very beginning. That was something that we wanted to do. And so for that capacity, that was certainly an addition to our portfolio. And that's why I'd mentioned such a unique opportunity to bring additional capacity to the portfolio. So that's new capacity to help serve the needs going forward that we didn't have before, well, what we wouldn't have had before November 1st. The arrangement that we're going to pursue going forward, which is part of our amendments with DWR, will look to replace the existing equipment at Roseville Power Plant number 2. We use the term repowering commonly in our industry, but it simply means we're going to take the old stuff out, put the new stuff in. So that is not obviously adding capacity to the portfolio. That's making the capacity, taking units that are of the Cold War vintage 1980s, old technology, less efficient, less emission controls, and we're going to replace it with basically, or our proposal is, we're hopeful that we can reach an arrangement to replace that capacity in the same numbers, the same value, but replace it with capacity that is more cost efficient, effective to run, cheaper to run, better on emissions, and then more reliable because they're simply not 40-year-old units that we have to throw money at. Yeah. So to answer your question, new capacity for the deal we just closed, making the capacity better of the ones that we're looking ahead. But that's not done. We're very early in the process for that, but that's the objective there.
Cool.
A follow-up on DWR. I'm curious about their position in this. In other words, they were in a real crisis mode and desperate to get more capacity into the system, the old duck curve thing. But now we move forward, and they're willing to allow us to take them over. Have they? There's been a lot of additional battery, capacity added into the system. So does DWR still get a benefit from these, or are they completely in the control area in which we reside and no longer ISO assets?
So they still get a value going forward. And that was part of the commitment that we made as part of taking ownership of these particular units. The state, just like you said, they, 2.5 years ago, these were put in under governor's executive order, installed with waivers to some of the emission and permitting requirements. And as part of us taking these over, we still have a commitment to make them available to the state of California through 2030 during the certain defined grid emergencies. So, Commissioner, I think the answer to your question, they still see value in those. They still see the need based on what's happening more broadly on the California grid. Supply demand is tight, as you probably know. Batteries are really the most meaningful new capacity that has come on in the state of California, but they need to be charged, right? There still needs to be production to get get them there. So the answer to your question is the state, although in ownership they've transitioned them to us, but we still have a commitment to make them available during grid emergencies when necessary. And that's really the value that the state had. They were intended to help keep the lights on during grid emergencies. Our arrangement commits us to do that for the 5 years through the remainder of the agreement we have, through this new program that we're in. So the state will continue to get value, but it's going to be through our commitment to make them available during grid emergencies. The other thing that's relevant for this is the state of California, the program that these particular units and the ones that were located elsewhere in Yuba City, they were designed under a certain governor program and executive order. And I think in many regards, the state sees that as it served a purpose. It kept the lights on. They ran for many years during the summer. But their attention has now focused on looking at new technologies, renewables, and spending money on those going forward. So there's two things that I think it benefits the state from. One is we have that commitment to make them available, but it also allows them to refocus their spending and strategy on different technologies outside of gas, while we were certainly willing to take those on and meet that commitment. I'll mention the commitment to make them available during grid emergencies is really nothing that was troublesome for us. As a municipal entity, certainly when the broader grid gets in an emergency, we're all in. We're going to make the units available anyway. But we did implement through our agreements a commitment device contractually that we have to do it. So that's the value they get, and then they get the value of being able to take money that they would have otherwise had to continue to invest in these units and refocus them going forward.
Any other questions of staff? Okay. Is there any one from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? All right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Great. I'm going to set up here with the next presentation as well. So I think Chris Romero is up here for a legislative regulatory update.
All right. Item 6.4, Roseville Electric Legislative and Regulatory Overview, presentation by Government Relations Representative Chris Romero, providing a year-end overview of priority energy-related legislation and regulatory issues addressed in 2024 for information.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Just want to begin our presentation with a brief overview of the legislative and regulatory advocacy efforts, which is a priority for both the electric department and the city as a whole. Every year, our team prepares an annual legislative platform which guides our advocacy efforts on legislation. We had over 150 state and federal energy-related bills this year that we monitored. We also have dedicated staff and lobbyists to ensure that our interests are covered at both the state and federal venues. We also work very closely with our industry trade associations to help influence legislation that could potentially impact our utility and community. These trade associations are the California Municipal Utilities Association, CMUA, the Northern California Power Agency, NCPA, and at the federal level, we work very closely with the American Public Power Association, known as APPA. Our first issue on the agenda is the Utility Exploration Center, also known as the UEC. Our department has been conducting tours of the UEC the past several months, and we gave a tour with our trade association, NCPA. This event was part of NCPA's annual legislative staff tour. There were about 25 legislative staffers that attended from both the state and federal side. This tour focused on talking about the benefits that our one-of-a-kind center provides to our community and the value of a community-owned utility to Roseville. From this NCPA tour, staff received another request to host a tour from our representative, Assemblyman Joe Patterson. This tour was successfully held last week. With the UEC promoting such behavioral changes as conservation and energy efficiency, staff is looking to get regulatory benefits from our UEC in the future. Visitors are extremely supportive of this center. It's a tremendous benefit to our community. We're very proud to be able to showcase this center to our government representatives and the region as a whole. Our next issue is the Distributed Electricity Backup Assets DEBA grant update. Sean shared a lot of information on this program. I just want to give some highlights to add to that. On August 14th, the California Energy Commission unanimously approved Roseville's DEBA grant proposal. Roseville was selected number 1 in the applicant pool, receiving up to $1.37 million in grant funds. And as Sean mentioned, this grant supports upgrades to the Department of Water Resource units located at the Roseville Energy Park. If you recall, a few years ago, these units were originally cited in response to Governor Newsom's 2021 emergency proclamation due to state power shortages that had occurred. Now I would like to move on and address several energy-related legislative bills that our department monitored this year. We had a watch on all of these bills, but we were very involved behind the scenes in shaping some of the language and the outcomes of these bills. The first bill is Assembly Bill 1465, which increases existing penalties from the local air district by up to 3 times for emission violations. The Roseville Energy Park is classified as a Clean Air Act Title V source, and it could be impacted by this new law. Roseville, along with our trade association, CMUA, worked successfully to have a letter to the Daily Journal included with this legislation. This letter clarified that the bill would not change the existing law around the ability for penalties to be waived, specifically for publicly owned utilities that operate backup power generators during an emergency. In reviewing the code, most of the penalties are for negligent violations. And on a positive note, Roseville continues and has had a great working relationship with our local air district, the Placer County Air Pollution Control District, so we believe this new law will not pose any major issues for our utility. Our second bill is about electric vehicle chargers. This bill expands the jurisdiction of county sealer employees to include their ability to monitor publicly operated EV chargers. It authorizes the county sealer to test and to verify the accuracy of these electric vehicle chargers to ensure customers receive the proper amount of electricity. However, there are certain conditions where a POU could monitor the EV chargers themselves instead of using the county. For this to occur, a POU must test all EV chargers at least once every 6 months. And if the EV charger needs to be repaired or corrected, it must be completed within 30 days. The bill would also authorize the County Board of Supervisors to charge an annual registration fee. Prior to this law, a county sealer was only able to monitor privately owned EV charging stations. But pretty much in essence, the author's intent of this bill is for the customer to get what they pay for when they're charging their electric vehicle. Staff worked with NCPA on this to shape a more flexible piece of legislation. Our department's comfortable with the legislation and having the county sealers complete these tasks. Our next bill addresses the increase in electric rates. With rising electric costs and impacts to customers, this is a study bill to determine how to get a handle on increased electric rates. This bill would develop a framework to assess and track total energy costs paid by residential households in California by the year 2026. The author of this bill is the chair of the Energy Committee, Ms. Petrie Norris, who has been very focused on electric rates for customers. As the state has continued to increase tighter emission reduction goals, the cost to meet these mandates has been ignored, and now we're continuing to see the consequences of rising electric rates across the state. The good thing is that this bill does not apply to publicly owned utilities like Roseville. The focus on this legislation is the investor-owned utilities. We will continue to monitor similar legislation next year as electric rate affordability remains a big issue for the legislature, for utilities, and of course for our customers. Next bill. For the past couple years, the legislature has contemplated the details of a climate resilience bond. Ultimately, Senate Bill 867 was passed by the legislature and signed in July. This bill places a $10 billion bond on the November ballot, providing funding for various climate resilience projects. Some of the funding earmarked in this bill is $3.8 billion for safe drinking water, recycled water, stored groundwater, $1.5 billion on wildfire prevention, including reducing community wildfire risk. There's also $850 million available for clean energy projects, including offshore wind and transmission infrastructure. Just a side note, earlier this year, the state reported an identified need of $30 billion to meet their offshore wind. So $850 million is a drop in the bucket for that. There's also $50 million for large battery storage projects as well. This bill will be on the November 5 ballot as Proposition 4. And finally, our last piece of legislation, we call it the Mosquito Abatement Bill. Senate Bill 1251 sets up a process for a formal agreement in the case that a voluntary agreement cannot be reached between our electric utility and the Mosquito Abatement District related to inspections of electrical vaults. Currently, vector control agencies, county and health inspectors monitor these areas that are prone to mosquito infestations. Due to standing water and electrical vaults, these areas must now be monitored. It's our understanding that PG&E was not being very helpful with mosquito abatement agencies, and now this legislation was developed to require a formal vector agreement if voluntary talks break down. Roseville does not see this as a big issue for our city. We have not been asked to inspect our electrical vaults. Roseville staff work closely with NCPA to limit where these can be inspected. Roseville would need to provide locations of the vaults if we need to get into a formal agreement. However, our utility data must remain kept confidential. As I stated, historically, Roseville has not received inspection requests in the past, and we don't see this as an issue for us. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Go ahead.
The Prop 4 legislation,
Yes.
my question is, what's in it for Roseville? In other words, wind, offshore, this is a subsidy program for wind developers because it's so expensive. And batteries, it's subsidy for the battery developers because they're so expensive, which I don't see either one of those being of any benefit to the city of Roseville. The wildfire stuff, that's good. Anyway, could you give me, you covered what's in the bill, but you
Sure.
didn't tell me whether or not it was worth anything to the city of Roseville.
Sure. Well, again, as I stated earlier, we have had a watch on this bill, and there are no specifics other than these large lump sums of dollars that have been allocated if this Proposition 4 passes November 5th. So at the present time, we're going to watch and see what the public does on this, and if it gets passed, staff will get down to business and find out if there's going to be any details or potential programs, whether they be grants or loans, et cetera. I don't know, Sean, did you have anything to add on this?
No, I think that's right, Chris. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to follow up on Einer, in reading the ballot of supporters, I didn't see like League of California Cities or any of the public power or for that matter, investor power owned utilities writing support arguments.
Yes, to your point, our trade associations, had a watch on, this Senate bill as well. So again, we're talking $10 billion with very little details, and that's kind of where we're at right now. But if this does pass, and we get more details as they come, we'll definitely be reporting this back to you.
Any other questions from staff? So anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address this issue? All right. Okay, thanks very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, next is item 6.5, Roseville Electric Utility Backbone Fee update. Yeah, okay, and I'm sorry. This is a presentation by Electric Chief Operating Officer Sean Matcham and Electric Utility Finance Administrator Joanna Cucci with the Electric Utility Backbone Fee update, and this is for recommendation.
Yeah, maybe before Joanna starts, I'll note that the title on the slide has her as our Utility Financial Administrator. Just last week, she was promoted as our Acting Assistant Utility Director, so this will be her first presentation with that title, so.
No pressure.
No pressure.
I'm here to talk about our Roseville Electric Utility Development Fee. We titled this our backbone fee. So this fee basically funds all backbone development that is related to new customer growth in order to ensure that new growth pays for itself and it's not on our current customers to pay for development in new growth areas. So kind of as I just said, the backbone is our high voltage portion of our distribution system. So this is substations and high voltage lines. And then the backbone fee does recover the cost to install or upgrade this infrastructure due to new development. We use a KVA-based method, and we look at the new customer and the new capacity required to serve those customers and their impact. It is a forward-looking calculation. We look at development in the future, and then it's a clear administration for us. It's a simpler way to calculate this fee than some much more complicated ways to get at this same calculation. So on the screen now are the current projects or the next 5 years of projects that relate to our backbone system. So we have 3 projects planned or already started that relate to our backbone system. The first is the Sierra Vista Transformer Addition. Basically, this is adding a transformer to the Sierra Vista substation. We are assigning 75% of that substation to new development. The other 25% is assumed to support existing capacity and back up the current system. The Creekview substation, that is the same thing, 75% of that project, that is a whole substation. That's why it's a much larger number than just the transformer addition. This construction hasn't been started yet, but we have started ordering equipment on this item. And again, 75% of that project is assigned to new development. And finally is the Vernon substation upgrade. The Vernon substation is one of our older substations. We would planning on expanding this substation to add capacity, especially to support development in the downtown area. This is a very large project at $18.8 million. The assumption is 25% of that capacity will be allocated to new development and 75 capacities to increase the reliability of the current system. So on that project, 25% is assigned to basically be collected by the backbone fee. So we take the total of that number, the allocated to new development number. Just go back one. Thank you. And that is 18.7 million. However, we have a remaining 5.2 million that we've already collected from the backbone fee. So we subtract that from what still needs to be collected. And basically, we need to collect $13.5 million in backbone fees from the remaining development of the city. And so we take that number, divide it out by KVA of new development that we expect for this, the city growth over the next 5 years. So we did make a change in assumptions this round. As we see EV adoption and all-electric homes become more common, we're increasing the assumption of KVA per unit on our residential customer development. So on a residential single-family home, the existing assumption is 5.5 KVA. However, when we're designing new development, we are looking at 6 KVA for those customers now. There's just a lot more electric load per house when you talk about capacity. They can peak higher if you're plugging in a electric vehicle, you have an air conditioner running, you have 42 iPads plugged in, depending on the number of children. And so just the possibility for peaking is much higher in our residential classes than we used to have. So we are proposing an increase to 6 KVA for a single-family home and 4.35 for a multifamily home. Our commercial customers are charged by KVA designed, so that is a per KVA rate, so that calculation doesn't change. Next slide. Thank you. So this is a super busy slide, and I apologize for that. We just kind of wanted to walk through. So starting with our current fee, the top table. So as you can see, we had the 5.5 KVA assumed for residential. So those are the assumed that we had before. And our current fee is $92.82 per KVA. So as you can see, that calculates out to $510 for a single-family home, $371 for multifamily, and then $92.82 per KVA for our commercial customers. So right around when COVID hit, we stopped increasing our fees for inflation. So these fees were adopted with the assumption that we would apply inflation in every year. If we had done that up into this date, the current fee would be $608 for a residential home, $442 for, single family, $442 for multifamily, and $110 for commercial. So that's if we'd applied all the inflationary increases that we would have been allowed by code. So looking at our proposed fee, the per KVA is actually lower than what inflation would have been for these fees. But walking through what we are proposing, the KVA is increased to 6 KVA for residential, single family, and 4.35 for residential multifamily. We're proposing a 98.70 per KVA rate based on the development that we showed on the prior page, which results in a $592 fee for single family, $429 for multifamily, and then again $98.70 for commercial times their capacity by KVA. So based on our current fee, what we're currently charging, that's an $81 increase for single family homes, a $58 increase for multifamily homes, and a $5.88 increase for commercial per KVA. So that's a 16% increase in our residential and a 6% increase in our commercial from the current fee where the inflationary increases were not applied. Okay, so we got through that slide. So the plan for the meeting schedule to adopt the new fees, we're presenting it here tonight at the Public Utilities Commission. We have City Council first reading on November 20th is the plan, with a second reading on December 4th, with a fee implementation on January 4th, 2025, after the 30-day waiting period. So we're here tonight to request that the Commission recommend approval to the City Council of the proposed adjustments to the electric backbone mitigation fee. And we'll happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. So, inflation is real.
Yes.
But you're not asking for what the old fees would have even done with inflation.
So
that I'm.
The way the fee works is based on the projects on the docket. And so we had fewer projects, honestly, on the forward docket than we did in the last fee. So while the prices have gone up, like per substation, we have fewer things on the list to still build.
So so you just don't need as much capacity, so the fee doesn't have to be as big.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a really nerd question here. I'm sorry about this. 6,000 watts, 6,000 kVA, 6,000 watts divided by 220 volts is only 27 amps. I've got a 200 amp panel. I don't understand how houses only use 6 kVA.
So an individual house could use more than that, but when you look at the diversification factor, because we're putting a bunch on one transformer, and so not every house is going to use all of their capacity at the exact same time. So you assume a diversification
And
of
when it's
usage.
110 degrees outside and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and everybody's running their air conditioner?
Yeah, we do oversize our transformers from that value, but the assumption is there is at least some level of diversification that happens amongst uses.
Right, well, if that's what the data says, that's what the data says. It just seems a little strange to me.
So you made kind of a cute remark, and I can relate because I've got grandkids with doing this. So, but my question is, all new construction requires solar. Houses are constantly more energy efficient. Appliances are more energy efficient. I think I asked this at a previous meeting. I know that's hard to factor in, and realistically, are we playing catch up, or are we, because you mentioned, I guess I'm trying to follow up on you, is this hard and fast, real numbers, or are we kind of?
This is what we're seeing. Basically, our engineers have begun to design larger capacity assumptions, and so that's why we included it in this study, is our engineers used to assume 5.5 per house, and they're designing now to 6. When you think of energy efficiency, you're really looking at energy, and that's use over time, basically, and what we have to design the system to is the peak. And so while houses are getting more efficient and solar exists, our peak is not when solar is producing, and it's when a lot of things plug in. So while energy use is going down, we're actually seeing a peakier system. So our peaks are getting higher while our energy is either staying the same or reducing. So we see that as an entire system. You'll see, Sean talked about it a little, our October peak. We just keep seeing our peaks, so that moment in time, get higher and higher, but our energy sales and energy use isn't necessarily following that.
Okay. And are we now beyond the McMansion era? I don't see a lot of McMansions being built. It seems like it seems like we're doing these more kind of clustered, townhouse, small lot.
I think the price of homes has just really gone up so much that people don't have the capacity to afford the largest homes anymore.
I'm going to add something to the discussion here. Just as, part of this rate structure is really to ensure that the requirements needed for new development, residential and commercial development, that they're paying their way and paying the infrastructure needed. And I think that's an important note here because, often, and Joanna's been close to this, certainly, when we go out and talk about rate increases and the need to raise rates, it's not being driven by new development. And we've always said in our community outreach and our rate outreach that development pays its way, right? So development pays for the infrastructure needed. And this is really how that happens. This is the rates that are charged for development. And we then take that money and invest in the infrastructure needed to serve it at the core backbone part of our system. That's how this works. And I just wanted to add that to the discussion. That's been something that we get a lot when we go out.
Will we be seeing any adjustments in the, not the high voltage stuff, which is what we are talking about here, but the other parts of the necessary infrastructure, the neighborhood transformers, the neighborhood underground installations and so on?
So that's actually collected through a different fee. So it's called a contribution in aid of construction. And so basically we direct charge developers for that work. So our crews go out and say, set a transformer, and they literally send a bill to the developer for that work. So that's direct charged, actual labor, actual cost directly to the developer. Since this system, you can't say you can't divide it out per developer like you can a transformer. That's why it's charged differently.
Okay.
Any other questions from commission? Okay, then and is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address this item? Okay, then I just have a quick technical question. Is there still like an open comment, written comment period for the public, or is that closed as well?
So that occurs with the city council, and so the first reading of that will be on November 20th, and that will have a public hearing at it. Where people can comment on the fee, and then the second reading would be the next meeting, which would be the first meeting in December.
Thank you. Okay, then we will now close public comment.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move that the commission recommend approval to the city council of the proposed adjustments to the electric backbone mitigation fee.
Second.
Thank you. I didn't even get to ask for the motion, but thank you
Second.
both. We will now call a roll call vote on the item. Pam, so will you please poll the commissioners on the motion?
Yes. Commissioner DeLacy,
Yes.
Commissioner Knox,
Yes.
Commissioner Maish,
Yeah, yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
and Chair Bilski.
Yes. The motion recommending approval of adjustments to the electric backbone mitigation fee passes. Thank you for your presentation, Sean and Joanna.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is board member, commissioner, staff reports. Any reports from staff? Questions or comments from the commission? Okay, does anybody have any future items?
Yes. Yes, I
Go
do.
ahead.
I would like to add to a future agenda a recommendation to appoint from this commission two representatives to the risk management group.
Just clarify, I know what you're at, the Risk Oversight
Oversight
Committee, which
Committee.
is different than the Risk Management.
Risk Oversight Committee. We normally have two members of that group. I'm one of the current members, and our previous second member termed out of our commission. That was Commissioner Granger.
Anything else? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes. I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been
Wait.
moved and seconded, we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much.